All right, you guys see my screen again, quote like a pro. We're going to roll. The main goals that we're going to have for today will be, we want to be able to determine a bill rate with, accuracy, develop a quote, figure out how preferences affect price, presenting a quote, pricing pitfalls, measuring the job for accuracy after the fact, and then delivering a service that matches your proposal. However, if we have some time at the end, we're going to go over the power of rate increases and how that affects your business over time. We're going to get into a little bit of nerd math on inflation, but that's only if there's time. So I want to just make sure, make sure that we cover the basics of getting through this. I'm also going to have some giveaways for you guys, as far as some calculators that you guys can take home and put to use in your business right away to figure out pricing, if you're pricing right, if you're going to be able to pay your people enough based on the pricing model that you have. So we can dive right into it. So I think we pretty much all understand the supply demand curve, right? If you price too low, you'll have so much business that you really can't deal with it. If you're booking out 4 weeks in advance right now because you are very labor constrained, now is an incredible opportunity to reflect on what you're charging and what you could be charging. There is a point in this curve here where you will not be able to probably sell as much as you would like. There's a tipping point where you charge too much on the price, and you're going to probably see a decline in your ability to sell. That's all basic. That's all basic math and basic, fundamentals of economics. But most of us are probably priced too low in reality. It's not that we're priced too high, especially right now in a constrained labor market. It's going to be incredibly important to price correctly so you can get your people paid well, and so forth and so on. So the first thing I kind of want to just bring your attention to is this graph that I kind of created on your bill rate. And the point of this is that if you were to increase your price from $45 to $55 an hour, you could reduce the number of homes you clean by almost half and still make the same amount of money. Okay. So you don't have to double your prices to continue to make the same amount of profit, or even double your prices to double your profit. You actually just need to make a small increase in what you charge, because you're doubling your profit margin, not your price. So if that makes any sense to you, you don't have to make drastic price increases to fix some things that are broken in your business. The other thing to take into account on this chart is, and I'm going to give you guys all these slides when we're done. Do you see when the efficiency factor goes from 70 to 80%, how much less work you have to do to make the same amount of money? That's really the power of scheduling your people well and making sure that they're using their time well. So if you're having your people drive all over town and not scheduling efficiently, you just can't make as much money per employee. So let's just use the 70% example. If you're charging 45 per hour, a technician is available 8 hours a day. If their efficiency factor is 70%, you can only bill them for 5.6 hours. If it's 80%, you get almost another half hour that you can bill them for in a day by scheduling more efficiently. Stack that up over a number of employees, that's really impactful. This number of loaded payroll of $22, what that is that's assuming that an employee is making roughly, I believe I used roughly $16 an hour, and then put in all of the taxes, insurance, and I'll give you a calculator for that to help you kind of figure that out before we're done as well. This is also one way to kind of work backwards and figure out price. How much do you need to pay your employees to be competitive in this labor market? If that's something you haven't really put a lot of thought into, it really should be. So kind of working our way down here, that if you're only charging $45 per hour, you can generate $252 per day for that employee, right? So that goes up obviously quite a bit if you raise prices to $55 an hour. So you'd be able to increase that from that 252 to 308. That's just math. That's simple, right? But what really goes on is to make the same gross profit of $1,000, right? You only need a little under 8 technicians to make the same profit at $55 an hour as you did at at $45 an hour. Does that make sense? I mean, you can really drastically reduce the amount of employees that you need to make the same amount of profit if you do this right. So, my company right now is generating about 95% of the revenue that we did prior to COVID in 2019 with about 70% of the available technicians. I have like 23 technicians available today. I'm struggling with this as well. I had 37 prior to COVID, but do that math in your head. I'm doing 95% of the revenue I did with not quite, it's less than 65, 70% of what we had in labor before. That's because we've raised prices, but we've really also increased our efficiency drastically. We really make sure our schedules are better. We're using a lot more solos where they start at the customer's home, which means there's less drive time from the office to jobs and that sort of thing. All of those things affect how much revenue you can make on the same number of technicians. Because it really gets crazy when you look over here at $55 an hour with only 7 technicians or less, making almost as much money as this example over here. So, I would say really getting your efficiency down, making sure your price is right. That's going to have a lot to do with how you price and what you can earn off that. So what I always see in all the groups is, what should I charge? And there's 2 components on that, right? So the first component was, what should I charge per hour? Or what do I want to make per hour so that I can pay my people enough to run a business? But the second is, how long does it take to do that job, right? So, time goals, creating what I would call workloading is really important. This is way more common in commercial. Like they don't mess around. Like they know exactly how long it takes to clean something. So when you do commercial bids or you see someone do it, they're counting toilets, they're counting chairs, they're actually charging for all these items individually. And they have a workload in terms of minutes that they have this for every possible situation. So that's important to figure that out. And we tend to do it a few different ways in the maid service industry. So square footage is common, and it'll get you a good price. It's always a guess a little bit, but it's okay if you kind of know your production rates. Allowances per room, and that's what I do. I actually have like a worksheet that it's in my software now, but the way I do it is, a kitchen takes 30 minutes for I think of my bread and butter house, guys. Think of what is the house you do the most of? So for my company, a bread and butter house is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. That's like the house that I want to sell all day long. Why? Because I can make the most money on it, and I can get in and out of those houses pretty regularly with the same processes. I can send 1 technician to a house like that, and they're not going to be there all day. That's my bread and butter. If your bread and butter is 6,000 square foot houses with 6 bedrooms and 6 baths, then that's a little different model than mine. But the minutes per room model still works. You just need to modify that for the square footage and some other things. But I really like determining a hallway in a house takes this, and really, then when a customer comes to you and says, I want to remove that bedroom, and how much does that take off my price? Well, that's 8 minutes. That's going to be $8, man. Right? Like they think they're going to get some big price break because they've asked for you to remove a bedroom. A bedroom takes 10 minutes to clean at most. Like it's dusting, taking out the trash. You come back in there and vacuum and mop it, or if it needs to be mopped, if it's hardwoods. But otherwise, we're talking minutes. And if you're using workloading by minutes, by room, it's much easier to make those adjustments when they start wanting to do a la carte cleaning situations. So square footage works as a method, but it's really affected by a lot of factors, and you should probably think about these in a lot of the things that you're doing. But your production rates with square footage is going to be vary a lot by the house. A smaller house, you might only be able to produce so much cleaning per hour that's significantly less than a big house, and I'll show you that on the next slide. But small houses tend to have a lot more density of knickknacks and items. We all know that. So we all know that that a smaller house can oftentimes, you can't have too low of a price. Like the difference between 1,000 square foot house and a 3,000 square foot house is not always times 3 times more, because that smaller house has a lot of the same features. It has a kitchen, it has a bathroom. Those things take time. It has all these, but it also has a lot more density of people, pets, things like that. Hardwood versus carpet, pets, all those things affect how much production rates you can do per hour. This is a slide where you might want to take some notes. And we're going to give this to you anyway, but industry average here, most cleaning technicians can produce 700 to 800 square feet per hour in cleaning productivity. So if you're going to use square footage, that's a good place to start. And that's for maintenance cleaning, not for deep cleaning. You might want to cut that in half if you're talking about deep cleaning. But if you can clean 700 square feet per hour, then what you would do is a 1,500 square foot home would take you, divide that. Let's just use 750 because it's a nice round number. So that's 2 hours. So then you just need to multiply that times your bill rate of $50. And okay, I've got a $100 home, right? That's as simple as it gets. Oh, actually, here you go. I have the same example right there, basically for an 1,800 square foot house. A very experienced cleaning technician can probably do 1,000 plus square feet an hour. So one cool thing about doing flat rate pricing is, and not charging people per the hour, is as your technicians get faster, you're kind of basing it on an average technician. But as your company gets more experienced and you have more experienced technicians that have been with you for a long time, if you're pricing this right, you'll actually end up making more per hour, and you can incentivize your employees. That's a whole nother topic, and pay for performance and other things. We do not have time for that today. But if you do this right, then you can actually incentivize your employees with pay for performance models that incentivize them to clean faster, so you can sell more per day, and they're still going to produce very similar results. So I got a note in the chat here. Let's see. And then Chris, how do you determine that stopwatch room time? That is, yeah, I mean, over the years, we've workloaded it. I have some examples I can probably share with you from the back end of my software later today, and I'll just let you guys copy all those rooms down if you're interested. We'll get to that. That's a good question. But yeah, the way that we did it was we actually basically measured. I had an operations manager go follow behind several teams and was stop watching how long it took to kitchen, how long it took to do a bath. And that's how we initially came up with those numbers. I'm a big fan of that method. And I think it's actually the most accurate quoting you can do. Again, square footage, there's so many variables, but the size of the house is what's really going to change the variables, because you can produce a lot more cleaning in a bigger home. That's why if you're going to do square footage, you almost need a worksheet that basically breaks it all down, what your production rates are for different size homes, like on average. So what I would do is if you have some historical data on how long it's taken you to clean a 5,000 square foot home, figure out like what the production rate was, like how many square feet per hour you're doing that big home in. And I think you're going to really realize that you're going to be doing those bigger homes. You're producing more cleaning per hour in those big homes. So that's a really important thing to take note of if you're going to price by square foot, is that typically the bigger the home, the more cleaning you produce per hour. So they do tend to get a little bit of a price break in terms of how much you can produce. So to simplify pricing by room, Chris asked about this. What you can do to start with is just break everything into quarters per hour. So And so if a kitchen is 35 minutes, I would actually just make that equal 3/4. So you actually would build your bid at 45. Not as accurate, but again, gives you a little bit of breathing room when you're doing this, when you're just getting started. So like a half bath, you might do like a half bath might be 1/4, right? So as a simplified way to start off pricing per room, you can break that down into quarters of an hour instead of trying to get it down to the minute. It's just an easier way to kind of get started. And you end up giving yourself a little bit more breathing room on average on your bids. So you have a little bit more time and flexibility. So these are taken right from my software, but we can get into these a little bit more. These are just some examples of what I charge per room. Again, this is based on a bread and butter house for us. That's roughly 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. So we would adjust that based on factors like how much square feet there is, things like that. So we can show that in the next couple slides. But those are some examples of some room times for what we would call wet rooms, like kitchens, bathrooms, so forth. Dry rooms like bedrooms and things like that tend to take less time. These are going to be the rooms that actually really affect price the most. If you have a house that has a big addition on it and they just double the size of their kitchen from something like that, you really need to be prepared to raise that customer's price, because kitchens take, if there's anything that takes the most time of any one room in your house, it's the kitchen. So if a house has, a basement, the price of the basement might not be that much, but if it has a wet bar and 2 bathrooms, then yeah, you need to make sure you're accounting for all of those things. Because I see a lot of people just say, oh, a basement's $20 extra. You haven't seen my basement. My basement's 900 square feet. It's bigger than my first house. It's finished. It's got, a huge master bath down there and a half bath. It would be like cleaning another house. You have to, I think accounting by rooms, making sure that you're capturing those wet rooms especially, will have a lot of positive impact on your pricing, getting it right. So again, allowances per room, if you just broke it down into quarters, you could say that like in a large home, a kitchen might take 4/4. This is just meant to simplify this for people getting started with pricing per minute per room. Again, you'll get the slides on this. You can play around with it and see if that is a method that makes sense for you. Usually everybody goes to square footage because it's quick and easy, and generally it gives you a fairly good price. However, bedrooms and bathrooms, especially bathrooms, has so much more to do with pricing than the square footage of the home. So obviously the other things that have to do with pricing for the way that I price things is, if somebody's asking for emergency service, I charge a 25% premium for that. And this is just something to consider. But if somebody's asking for you to clean tomorrow, and you're going to have to maybe move some things around, and it's going to be a hassle, and they're probably going to be picky, and probably, you're taking some risk, you should charge more and let your people make more if possible for that kind of like emergency work. I know companies that actually, in fact, no, I actually charge 75 per hour, 20, yeah, it's like a 40% premium for that. So, and I charge a premium for one-time work for deep cleans at $65 an hour, instead of my standard rate of $55, because if it's a one-time job, even if they booked it out into the future, I still want to make a premium on that because there's more risk, there's more to manage for a one-time job. Once recurring work is set, it's, like when people tell me what the rates are, I think you should have different rates for different kinds of services. So bear that in mind. I think that's really important, that you don't just say my rate is $55 an hour, because it's not. If somebody wants you to come out on a Saturday, you've got somebody that wants to do it, I think you should charge more for that and reflect it in that. Travel time, I have a set region that we cover, but if you have jobs that are outside of your standard scope or whatnot, and you need to account for that, because that's going to lower your efficiency to have jobs with travel time that's outside of that. Frequency is definitely important to consider. Obviously a monthly customer, it really depends, but their house is going to be a lot more work. And we actually charge skip fees. If you skip a job at all with my company, we automatically charge you $20 extra for, so even if they gave us plenty of notice, I still charge $20 for a skip fee. My thought process on that is we need to account for at least another half hour or more, and we're really giving them a discount on that versus what it really takes us if they went from biweekly to monthly for that month. Even from weekly to biweekly, we still charge a skip fee. We're really trying to do a couple things there. A, encourage them to stay on their schedule. B, we just want to provide more consistency, and consistency really is the key to, really great results in this business. So, but frequency is what we want to do. So the way that everybody in our industry typically goes and gets their prices is this market analysis. This is how everybody figures out what they're going to charge. They call everybody else or call the other cleaning companies and they say, what do you charge for this cleaning? And then they try and, backwards out solve what they should charge. What commercial cleaning companies do, and this is what I really think, what I showed you that calculator earlier that I'm going to give you, it's the cost plus model to figure out what you should really charge. So, but let's start with competitive analysis, and then we'll kind of work towards that. So I guess I didn't have that slide up. So there's a lot of people you can ask, to get some competitive analysis. Don't discount your employees. They probably have worked for other companies, prospective clients, review sites, daily deals. Look at their online booking tools. That'll give you a good way to do it. You can also secret shop your customers. Don't do that from your cell phone, like your personal or your company phone. You can get like a Google Voice number or something like that and just do this. Everyone does this. I really typically don't, because I actually workload mine out so that I can figure out exactly what I need to make to pay my employees what I want to pay them. So I kind of base it on, I start from where I want my employees to be, what I want them to make, and then I look at the competitive landscape. If we can create a competitive price based on being efficient and fast and not just trying to beat out the competition. So but if you do find that you're way overpriced based on market analysis and you're not getting the work, then certainly you're going to want to adjust that. So let me take a look here. So this is really, and you'll have this calculator, but this is really how I figure it out. So my average employee makes close to $19.90 per hour or more, maybe over 20 now. So, but I just use 15 because that's kind of like the new minimum wage. Would we all agree that you're not going to hire anybody less than $15 an hour at this point in this market? If you are, then you're doing something else to attract them that that I'm not doing. But you need to figure out what that employee costs you per hour. So if they're 7% efficient, then every hour that they're cleaning costs you $20 an hour base time. Okay. But if you also need to figure out what their labor related costs are. So insurance, taxes, Medicare, I have holiday, vacation in there. And then if there's any other benefits, typically for most companies, this is around, just for your own reference, when you get the calculator, it's around 23 to 25% in addition to the labor cost. You have direct labor of just the employee's time. But if you have all this in QuickBooks, you can get the exact number. I also include it says GL here. That's your insurance, because that's typically a variable cost of doing business. The more cleaning you do, the more services you perform, the more your insurance goes up. So I consider that a variable cost. So these are all variable costs of doing business. And typically it's around 23 to 25%. For my company, it's a little higher because we offer benefits, retirement, healthcare, all those kind of things. And those all add up to a little bit higher loaded rate. So I use 30% in the example, made for a nice number of $6 in additional costs. So total labor loaded costs of $26 an hour. So just to perform a cleaning with a $15 an hour employee, it's costing you $26 an hour, just so you're in that number. And then depending on depending on how you do different things, chemicals, at 0.03%, that number might be lower for you. It might be 1% of doing business basically, so that might be lower. I put in some numbers here for reference. Travel being the highest, this should actually be 0.1% there. So, but the number's right. 260 is the right number. So, an additional 442 in other variable costs here. These are direct costs of doing business. So again, the grand total home is roughly $30.42 for a $15 an hour employee. Does that make sense? It really costs you at least that much. All right. Then if you have any overhead, right, you've got an office, you've got staff to pay, back office staff, you've got credit card processing, you've got, and maybe that should probably even go into the variable. I could probably even throw that into the variable. Marketing to pay for. You've got all these other things. For most companies, this is going to be on the calculator when you get it. Is going to be somewhere between 25 and 40%. I used a higher number for me because I spend a lot of money on marketing. I want to keep attracting customers, and I spend a lot on advertising for employees. I spend roughly, I don't even know right now. I think it's close to $2,500 a month on just on marketing for employees right now. So, but 40% would not be uncommon for your overhead. If you run really lean, you run a home office, you're the only person, then maybe this number is lower. But I think you should at least make it somewhere between 25 and 30% as the lowest number, because if you do want to add staff, you want to price this number, this number, so that you can grow your business. So it's not just for what you are doing today, it's for what you want, the business you want to create. So I used 40%. So that added another $10 to my example. So just to deliver an hour of cleaning is $40.82 is kind of what I would consider, the bare minimum that I could make and just break even. And then if I want to make a profit of 20%, I need to mark that up another $8.17. And that would be basically the bare minimum bill rate. So in this example, $49 an hour on a $15 an hour employee. I can tell you right now, $15 an hour is not going to be as competitive as we'd like it to be. So you might need to run these numbers, and just raise that up and see what it's like if it's $20 an hour. But this is what I mean by a cost plus analysis of figuring out what you really need to charge. Does this make sense to you guys? Give me a thumbs up if this is a method that makes sense to you to kind of really figure out your price. Instead of just calling around and finding out what everybody else is doing, because you don't know if they're going broke. Like, your competitors could be going broke, and we're just going like, well, so-and-so down the street charges $30 an hour. I'm going to charge $30 an hour. Well, she's broke in 6 months, and she's charging less than it even costs to operate in the home. And you base your pricing on that. So again, cost plus is the way that I would recommend creating your prices. So at the very least, you're going to base all the knowledge you gained today, and you're going to kind of create some estimate rate sheets that you can actually basically, what I recommend is just creating a sheet with a list of prices at the very least for a set number of the kind of homes that you typically serve, based on what you find out from here, based on production rates and based on the price that you want to do. And then you can have some adjustments, right, for houses that are messy, that have pets, things like that. We have something in MaidCentral, the software that allows you to do this. I don't do it a whole lot, but I think it came over from Debbie, or even Debbie Sardone. I think she calls it, anybody know what Debbie calls this? Anybody a Debbie fan who knows? Can you put in the chat? I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's a good thing to kind of keep track of, because every home's a little different. And if they do have a mess factor, you want to adjust for that, right? Like, you want to, you have a house that has clothes all over the place, everything like that. That's in the chat here. What are we calling it? Dirt code. That's it. Debbie's dirt code. Yeah, that's a good system. So basically, what I would say is what you're looking for is, these are just different methods you could create, for figuring out what you want to charge per hour. So this is like production in terms of, you would divide the square footage by that number, like 7.33 if you wanted to make $55 an hour, and at a production rate of 700 square feet, you'd be making $51 per hour. So really, like when people tell me like, oh, I charge 8 cents per square foot, that is not that meaningful to me unless I know what my production rate average is. So if you're averaging 750 square feet, which is what I said earlier was kind of industry average, and you use this is kind of what people do sometimes to kind of get a price, then you can make this work. So this would be the very most basic thing I would do, would be kind of create like a price per square foot, like this 7 cents here or 8 cents, and divide it out. But the only way that works is if you know how long it takes for your production rates. Otherwise, it's just silliness and a guess. It's fine. I'm just of the mindset is you should really know and not be guessing. And honestly, sometimes it is all kind of a little bit of a guess, but then you're measuring it after the fact. Talked about it a little bit more. Obviously, you're not going to produce 750 square foot per hour on a one-time cleaning. I generally recommend people cut that number in half at the very least, maybe even a little bit more. So maybe divide by 2.5. One-time cleanings to me need to cost more in terms of time and what you charge. Recurring, right? I actually charge more for monthly customers. I only give my base rate to my biweekly and weekly customers. And then I have what I call on-demand customers that we have tagged like this in the software. They have a price, they've used this before, but they're looking for a good deal or something like that. What I use these for is I use my software and I actually give them my base rate because they're willing to take a spot at the last minute for me. So when I have somebody cancel at the last minute, I do a search in my software, I look for all my on-demand customers, and then I give them the same price as my biweekly and weekly because they're flexible. So flexibility is worth something to me as well. I value customers that are flexible and that, hey, yeah, I'll take that spot. And you want to have some of these customers that are on demand. It's nice to have everybody on the schedule, but on-demand customers are very valuable if you have a way to track them and get them into your schedule. So everyone on MaidCentral, you can actually create on-demand customers. See if your software that you're currently using does that. That is an incredibly powerful way to make sure your spots are filled and that you can make sure your days and your employees are always working. But I think you should price them fairly or even give them a break, right? So they might even get charged a little bit less because they don't have a set schedule and they're just getting fit in where you can fit them in. So the way this works best is if you are measuring your jobs. Someone asked about, do we use a stopwatch? Now with MaidCentral with the software, every job, we're always measuring the jobs. Like I know the allowed hours and I know if the team members hit those things. But I really want to make sure, and I want you to make sure, is that you have some method of tracking your jobs. So what you should do is on every job ticket you create, you should have something called allowed hours, right? Your team members should know how long this job should take. Now, allowed hours are in terms of man hours. So you need to divide that up by the man hours that are on the job or whatever. But if you have a 3-hour job and the team is taking 3.5 hours, you should know that customer is either underbid or the team's too slow. There is some corrections that need to be made or you will not be making money because that is 20% off. When we talk to you at a 20% profit margin, you go over by 20% on every job, you're done, right? We didn't bake that into the cake when we were talking before about profit margins and things like that and price per hour, because when you go over, effectively you're lowering what you're making per hour on each one of those cleaning technicians. So you need to be measuring this. You need to know it by home and by cleaner. You should know the productivity rate of your cleaners, who's good, who's not. We all kind of know this. We kind of think we know it, but you need to know it. You need objective data on it. Who is your #1 star in terms of how much production they do? You need to identify those underpriced homes, and you don't need to wait till it's time to raise them up 25%, right? That's going to be a tough negotiation at the end of the year. You've been cleaning them for a year and you're like, hey, Mrs. Smith, turns out we don't make any money at your home. It's time to raise your price 25%. If you did that early on and said, hey, it's really taking a lot longer, that's fine. So what I would do is, my good friend Kathy Gage, I don't know if anybody's been in business long enough to know Kathy. She was one of my mentors. I'm dating myself a bit here. I've been in the business since I was like 25. I'm 42 now, so about 17 years now. And Kathy's retired now, but she let me visit her office when I was like brand new. And she had this log, this sheet, and every single day, every single employee that went over on time had to log why they went over. If you don't have software, you need to hold your people responsible and let you know why they went over on their time. And was it the home was really messy? Was it, hey, so-and-so wasn't feeling her best today? Whatever it is, you need to log those inaccuracies, because it's not just selling to a price, it's actually making sure that price is correct. Okay. So that's that measurement. So this is what I'm doing in the software every day. Maybe it's a little bit small here, but for every single team, I'm looking at the over and under. So this team, when it's in red here, they went a little bit over on their time. So I want to find out what happened. And really this one here, where it's like an hour, 1.85 hours off. So what happened was the actual hours that it took this team was 6.87, right? It only had 5.03 allowed hours. They were off by 1.84 hours. That's a big deal. And I need to solve that. So I'm gonna talk to that team. I'm gonna find out if that's a trend or if that was just like a one-off thing. But those are things to kind of find out. And then it looks like we went under this job by 3 hours, under this job by 2 hours. As long as the surveys come back okay, I'm not too worried about it. So you also, the other component of this is the quality has to be there as well. But that's another, again, a whole nother discussion about measuring quality and measuring that against these kind of performance metrics. But it's all related. So pricing pitfalls, right? Don't get caught up in gathering every minute detail, right? I mean, you want to get data, and the more data you can get, the better you can deliver a consistent service to your customer. But I mean, at some point, if you've got 50 pages of notes, your technicians aren't going to read that stuff. You need to have, and especially, so for me, I kind of have a rule that if they have more than 3 special requests, they might not be my customer. So anybody else have a rule like that? If they've just got a bunch of, they just have a bunch of special requests, they might not be yours. But again, I do want to know things like, do they prefer certain times of the day? Do they have babies napping that we need to avoid those things? Eventually, I want to start knowing if they have technicians they prefer, because if I have a way to track that stuff and deliver it, I'm going to get better outcomes. My times are going to probably be better. A lot of the way that we can actually get better pricing on our customers' homes is actually sending consistent people that get to know those homes as well. So that's important in my company. I know some companies like to switch it up every time and rotate the teams. And for me, I think most people are like this too, is you actually get better results when you actually can continue to send the same people and they get to know the homes. Make sure that, as you're doing getting all those details, you're not losing sight of the fact that you're there to give them a quote. And you got to be conscious of their time, and whether that's on the phone or in person, however you do it. And don't insist on getting the quote right the first time. One of the things that my company does is we make sure that first time that they know that this is just an estimate and that this is subject to change. This is not set in stone. Does everybody agree that that is really fair? I mean, you don't know enough to, until you go in there the first time. Even if you walk through that house, and people that are still doing walkthroughs, how it is. They made that house look really good before that walkthrough. They want to make it look like nobody lives here. This is a piece of cake. I don't care who it is. That first walkthrough is disingenuous. That's why I don't even like in-home estimates. What I tell my teams is, if you get to a house and it's just not right when we get there, like we do it all over the phone or over the internet now, call us. We're gonna either renegotiate or walk away from that job. But And again, never promise that the price will never change, because we're going to talk about that later if we have time. But the pitfall to that is it's going to change, because there's going to be inflation. There's going to be right now we had 5% inflation in June, or 5.4% price inflation in June. July was back down to 1%, but that's 1% in 1 month. I mean, for the years before, we were at like 3% annualized. I don't care who you are, it's getting back under control. But my wage inflation in my company has been outrageous. And I know you guys are probably feeling that pinch as well. And the good thing is I had a little bit of margins to absorb that. Make it as simple as possible. Whatever really works for you, make it as simple as possible to get that quote right. It's always a negotiation. The price can and will change. All right. The last point, this one's obvious. Offer some variety and options for customers. So if they are pushing back on price, don't lower your hourly bill rate. There's no room on that, but give them some options instead. Be like, well, we can customize your quote. Instead of trying to meet them at their price, give them some other options. Obviously, that seems pretty basic. If you're still doing in-home estimates, awesome. It doesn't scale particularly well, mostly because of the volume that it does, but it does have the highest reported close rate. Most people say they close between 50 and 85% of every in-home estimate they do. That's awesome. And we want those things, but it's not scalable. But it does allow you to build that personal connection, get any agreements signed. Those are all good things. But it's really expensive, because if you think about the time that it takes you to go do that, for you to go spend an hour in a customer's home, it really takes you 2 hours to prepare for that. That's a quarter of your workday, basically into one bid. It's not really sustainable. Plus, I don't think a lot of customers really want to spend that time anymore either. So phone estimates are pretty much the standard now. You can get a lot of information. Find out a lot about their personality in that phone call. How are they going to be as a customer? I really do kind of rate that in that phone call. Like, that has a lot to do with price to me, is like, how difficult is this customer going to be? That's something that we train our salespeople in my company to rate and reflect on. If they're going to be very difficult, the price starts going up and up and up when we're doing that phone quote. So really get a feel for them. You can build a connection. You find out where they live, you have connections, spend a few extra minutes on that. People say that they have lower reported close rates. My company close rate is like 54% over the phone. I think I have another slide that shows this. So I don't see that. I think if you have a good quoting system, you can do this. There's obviously the risk of not seeing the home, but here's mine. So leads are just things that came off the internet, but a quote is somebody that we talked to on the phone. Okay. So we sold 81 quotes in this period that I looked at with a sales ratio of 57%. So I'm tracking all of this data. We're doing fine. Just internet leads to turning to any kind of work is 22%, but that does not include what we consider online booking and things like that too. So this is just phone quotes, not online booking. Does anybody else know their close rate on their phone conversion sales? You should probably have some method of tracking that if you're not. I will tell you anecdotally, I have 3 people selling for me. 2 of them have close rates in the 70% range, and one of them is not doing so great in the 30% range. You got to make sure you have the right people on the phone. I've got one person that I would probably be better off if she didn't pick up the phone at all. She's an awesome operations manager, and she just maybe needs some more, probably needs some more sales training, or I would be better off in general to let those go to voicemail than to have her do those sales. I mean, no offense to her, but we all have people like that in our business. So to get this kind of close rate, you're going to need to train your people. You're going to need to invest in being good on the phone, good phone skills, picking up the first time. That's all going to be important. Online estimates. So it's really the way things are going. I really highly suggest, if you don't have online estimate and booking, that you really kind of think about investing that in the next year or two. I think you're behind the curve. I mean, it's been around. Launch 27 came out in 2013. I've been doing online booking since 2010. I built my own system back in 2010. But there's been software out and available to the public for the last 8 years now that's readily available. Not to pimp another software, but there's several of other forms that are low cost, that you get you started. They're not going to be ideal because the real problem with those is they're not booking onto your schedule in real time. So you can be overselling and things like that. But really the hardest thing is it's hard to really get people to understand the value of your cleaning from online booking. That's why you have to do other things to get that done. Your website and your reviews and all those other things have to really sell your business in advance. So for online booking to work, you really need to have a decent website. You need to have good online reviews and good reputation. Does that make sense? Got something in the chat here. And Chris, yeah, everybody in my office has to be able to answer a phone and be able to do a sale. That's kind of like, that's our company culture. Like anybody that's in the office, including me, phone's ringing, needs to get picked up, and you need to be able to do a sale. I don't have everybody siloed off into you're a scheduler, you're a dispatcher. They all have like primary responsibilities. So Katie in my office is my primary sales person. Connie's operations, Aries recruiting and human resources. And then I have a field service bilingual manager who does a little bit of coverage in the office if people need a vacation or things like that. But online estimates can also complement your phone sales. So if you have a good system, this is kind of what my software, or what MaidCentral, the software I use in my business, sends out, is that you can send out a quote afterwards with your booking fee, and then they can just click on a button. And this is really powerful because a lot of the sales happen after the fact, where like the husband gets home or the wife gets home later that night, they're talking at the dinner table and somebody breaks out their phone, gets out this email. Hey, that looks good. Hit book now. Takes you over to the booking form. Hey, look, it's all filled out. They have all their information there already and they're ready to go. Again, whatever you do, just wrapping up these quoting tips here, is you got to control the conversation. You got to have a script and have a plan. If you're doing phone sales, you're doing in-home estimates, it needs to be scripted out. You need to practice this. You need to be confident in what you're going to say, what you do, and what makes your company special, right? And I'm not great about this. Is why I don't do sales. You got to smile, and you got to be on your game. Like, it's different than just having a daily conversation. It's like you're on stage, you're on video, right? You just have to present yourself in that manner. So I suggest always, smiling. This is what we teach our people. When you pick up the phone, smile. That is going to come through in your voice and your connection with people. Always try and make those connections. If they have dogs, kids, let them know. Let them know about you personally. Just take a little extra minute to make those personal connections. That actually has a lot of value, especially when you can't get into their homes. And then also have some ways to increase your sales afterwards. I'm sure everybody has pricing extras, but you want a good, easy way for them to have availability, your customers to know you have these. So either as a leave behind sheet or as an email with some regular cadence, you need to let them know what they can get from your company as an extra service. So before every cleaning, they have a customer portal where they can add on items up to 24 hours in advance of their cleaning. So maybe it's a little more than that. I don't know what the rule is exactly, but if somebody wants to add linens, the fridge, and then sometimes we'll put in the reminder email, hey, we're having a special on something if we're trying to increase revenue for a day because we're kind of low. You would be surprised. You could add $300 worth of revenue, an employee's worth of revenue from a single email, and basically fill up your schedule if you were like $300 low that day or something like that. So very easy to do, but you got to have some pricing extras, and your customers have to know that it exists. It's got to be clear for them that that's something you can do for them, and you have to promote that fairly regularly. I recommend, outside of your pricing, having a way for your customers to tip your technicians. Culturally, that may not be in your structure today, but I think it's pretty important. On average, my employees make an extra $1.50 per hour in credit card tips because we have that built in to our follow-up process after the cleaning that they can ask for. The customers can give out tips. Again, an extra $1.50 per hour. That over the course of the year is an extra $3,000 that didn't have to come out of my pocket. I have to pay the taxes on that, and I've got to pay the credit card processing, but that's a pretty fair trade to me. If it costs me $1 to pay them $10 more, I will make that trade every day. So consider at the very least having some process to have your customers regularly give them tips, because again, on average, I had a company the other day tell me, oh, they collect about $10,000 at Christmas time, and then they spread those out. My company collects about $63,000 a year in tips. So throughout the year, so about a 6x difference between, you know, doing it all at one time of the year or spreading out over the course of the year. And you want to make it really easy. Credit cards make this really easy for your customers to do this. We all do it now. We go to the bakery now, and we bought a $4 muffin, and we got to give a tip now, right? It's just like, it's the culture. It's the American culture. We've all passed this on. If you choose not to do it, that's fine. I just think it's an opportunity to, you know, capture that as part of your sales structure. And again, after the job is over, everything is negotiation. You want to be comparing those bill rates to the target rates and make sure that you are getting it right. If it's something you can fix internally, you need to talk to your teams, figure out if there was problem areas that you didn't do right first. So before going to the customer and saying your job is underbid, debrief, right? So I would suggest that you always try and see if it's something you could have done better first. If not, you bring it to the customer's attention, fix it with them, adjust the price, adjust the scope of work, or both. Adjusting the scope of work is what we talked about earlier. Give them some options. Like, look, we're not going to be able to hit your house for 200 doing all 3 floors. We're going to maybe rotate first and second floor, and we can keep it at 200. Whatever it takes, you know, create separate services for them, you know, and break it up. However you have to do it. But you know, it's also an opportunity to increase service frequency or expand service after the cleaning. I actually find sometimes if we have to raise a customer up a little bit, what we sometimes do is we say, hey, we could do a boost cleaning between your cleanings, right? Where we're just going to come in and do the floors, trash, and a little bit of touch up. It's about a third to half the price of a full price cleaning. We have a minimum of X for this. And so we actually increase their service frequency by doing this boost cleaning for them. And we really only try and schedule those when we're already in that area. And, you know, but we can turn a bi-weekly into a weekly pretty easily by having this, what we call a boost cleaning, and getting in there a little bit extra and just doing the floors and a bit of a, you know, floors, trash. And then just like if we see any spot cleaning to do, we're in and out of that house. And it's a very profitable add-on. So it helps us hit the target of their more regular cleaning. You'd be surprised how many people would actually take you up on that. Yeah. So we talked about this. No one's going to fire you for proposing a reasonable price increase. And if they do, they were already looking for a reason to get rid of you. You know, if you have to make any adjustments, make sure you have some priorities and options that you give them in advance. Be prepared for those calls when you're coming back to them and saying, hey, you know what, we're just not hitting the target hours. Here are some options. My priorities would be these things if I were you, and we can adjust it so that like every other visit we rotate it. And then looks like I got this slide out of order because this actually has to do with rate increases. So we'll jump into that. Yeah, I have that slide out of order. That actually has to do with rate increases. So again, action items for you to do right away today. Track all the jobs you're currently doing. Make sure they're bid accurately. Complete the target bill rate calculator that I'm going to give you and make sure that your pricing is accurate. And then basically start finding out for every customer whether you're on target or not with the time and the price you want to be, and then raise your rates accordingly. So I'm going to jump ahead to rate increases. We're right on the time. But I think this is valuable. If anybody has to go, I get it. We're right at that hour. But I want to talk about this a little bit right now, because it's not just pricing the first time. You have to continue to stay on top of this, right? We're in high inflation period. We've got increased wages for our long-term employees going on right now. Supply and demand is at all-time high as far as the low side of supply and the high side of demand. You know, we want to basically also account for that. But also when you're doing rate increases, you also, if you have a problem client, it's a great time to raise their rates quite a bit and perhaps lose those clients. You want to make sure that your revenue per hour is good in those houses. I actually account for whether a customer has a lot of complaints, breakage, or skips when I'm doing price increases. Those things account for a loss in your ability to make revenue through the year. Because if you're having a lot of complaints, you're going back there and that's lost opportunity to serve other customers. Skips. And I track all of that in my software. Whatever you do, you should know those things. And you should track how much breakage or how many breakage incidents that you have. And maybe even to the dollar. I had a customer that probably cost me on average like $1,000 a year in breakage. And we never could make money on that house. So, you know, after the second year of that, we just had to tell her, Mrs. Smith, it just doesn't work. Like, we just can't seem to come to your house without breaking something, you know. And you know, she's pretty much blaming us for her house falling apart, but you know, it is what it is. We all been there. So you need to track that. But it also gives your problem opportunities a opportunity to quit on you if you raise their prices appropriately. So if you do have an unsatisfied client during this period of rate increases, or let's say just someone is always complaining, before we even do annual rate increases, we actually offer them a rate increase when they're asking about stuff. When they're unhappy, oftentimes what we do is we say, Mrs. Smith, we know your kitchen's never cleaning enough. It looks like we really need to add a little bit more time for the scope of work. You know, there's always a lot of extra dishes and things like that. We're happy to do X, Y, Z for you, but it's going to take more time. Would you like us to do that? And if we do, this is what the new rate will be. Oftentimes that actually can de-escalate those customers that are complaining all the time and get them reset on expectations, even if they don't take you up on that price increase. So you got to face your fear on this, guys, on price increases. Price increases is right now have to be done. So we're all afraid we're going to lose clients. You know, maybe our quality is not good enough. Maybe they're not going to be happy. Okay, if you have 100 customers, don't do all 100 at once. Do 10 a week, right? Break it up and do a little bit of a time. Get a feel for it. Your prices are not too high for your area. I mean, I'm generating over $70 per hour right now in my area. I'm in St. Louis. Nobody else is probably charging what we charge per hour, but we also are just so focused on efficiency and productivity. That's how we do it. And productivity, when I say that, is making sure we're hitting the allowed hours in every job. And I get rid of customers that we cannot hit those allowed hours for, because they're just not worth keeping around when I can sell to other customers where we can hit those. Efficiency is how well we use our time travel-wise and in between jobs, and productivity is how close we match the times that we expect to clean a job to what actually happens. You're not going to hurt the relationship to ask for more money. You know, everything's going up in price. Go to the grocery store now and I mean, I don't eat a lot of meat. I actually am close to a vegetarian, but go buy a steak right now. It is almost 40% higher than it was in 2019. Your customers are still eating steak, right? They're going to still keep having their house clean. They didn't give up steak. They didn't become vegans because steak costs too much. They are still going to eat that steak. They're still going to have your cleaning service. I know a lot of us are uncomfortable with conflict and pushback. Get comfortable with it. That's part of being in business. You know, maybe it's lack of know-how. Figure it out now, because it's getting there. It's getting there really quick. That if you don't, you're in denial of the current circumstances. You're in denial that you're not going to stay in business if you don't raise what you pay your employees. You're in denial that there's all these other people knocking on your door that would pay you more. So you need to get on top of that. These will be in the slides, but what I really want to show you is what happens if you don't. Okay, if you don't do this, so in 2020, and this is just assuming 3% inflation, if you increase your prices 3% every year to your incumbent prices, let's say your company doesn't grow in any other way, by 2030, you'd be generating $671,000. Okay, that's an extra $172,000 per year. But the downside of that is we were in a period of very low inflation. So I used the period from 2003 to 2013 because this was actually historically very low inflation. We might be in a period where this is actually going to be worse. But if you don't do any price increases, your $500,000 is worth $486,000 in year one. But by year 10, you've cut 20% off of what the value of what you're charging is, what you're making is. Your buying power has gone down 20% over the course of 10 years minimum. So you have to be on top of these regular price increases. So the way that I recommend doing this is on anniversary date. It spreads the work throughout the year. You'll get the increases sooner, and it limits the risk of pushback because you're only doing so many so often. So, you know, in MaidCentral, you just basically can run a report and just do every customer that hasn't had a price increase in 12 months, charge them 5% more, and it automates it. But whatever you do, don't hold off on this because it's painful to do. You know, the cons is that, yeah, this might fall in the middle of the summer when they feel like you're expendable. And it might be hard to consistently do this. The other way most people do this is they do it all at once. And let's say they've got 400 customers or whatever. They send out 400 letters and just pray that 40 people don't quit all at once, right? But you'd be better off. You'd be better off to spread it out. But those are the two different ways people choose to do it. There is two ways that people do this. They either do like a flat dollar percent, like they just add $5 to every customer, or a percentage. So the other thing is you can go through and do this per customer. We actually do this per customer at my company. So we actually look for customers that are way off and we adjust them accordingly. But I try not to let them get to the end of the year and be way off. So my recommendation is, you know, at least a 5% increase this year, and on average, no less than a 3% increase every single year. This year is kind of an exception. I have friends that have raised prices 20% and they still have kept their customers. So it's whatever it's going to take. But I would suggest no less than 5%, and then on average 3% every single year. These will all be in the notes since we're kind of into overtime. But again, I talked about it. When you're figuring these out, make sure that you're accounting for all these different things, especially complaints, breakage, skips. If they make a lot of scheduling changes, right? Then I would account for that and what they charge. But also, if somebody is, you know, very flexible in pricing, I might not go up as much, right? If we're always hitting their time or going a little under, maybe I treat them a little differently. You know, so that's all kind of things that I would kind of take into account when doing this. Whether or not you do a price increase to everybody gets a letter, right? So especially clients with no price increase, you should still send them a letter letting them know that a price increase went out, but they didn't, you know, for whatever reason, they didn't need one. Okay. That's a way to increase loyalty. And basically it also puts it in their head that maybe next year they are getting one. So if you do price increases and you raise it for 200, but 200 don't get it, make sure everybody gets some kind of letter letting them know that price increases did happen, whether it's an email, a letter, whatever you do, however you communicate with your customers, you need to communicate that. So, you know, I'll leave it at this. If it was easy, everyone would do all this stuff, right? This is all incredibly hard. It's, you know, it's really hard to run a successful cleaning business. You know, the list of companies that have the kind of success that we want to all achieve is incredibly short. So I'm going to leave you at this. You know, it's a MaidCentral presentation. You know, we have tons of customers, Alonzo Adams, Nina Boucher. What I would suggest is check out what we can do to help you with all this stuff. We can help you automate pricing, quoting, and deliver this to your customers in a little easier way. I often get pushback that MaidCentral is expensive, but compared to what? Not compared to the labor and time that it saves you in back office expenses and productivity increases that you can have for your business. So Right now, we're doing free onboarding and implementation. So the $2,000 price that you see on the website for that is waived. And you get my automation templates when you sign up right now too. So I know there's probably some existing customers on the call today. You're already here. You can have my templates too. I don't care. I'll give you the Better Life Maids templates that I use for all my automation. So what I'd love for you to do is book a one-on-one demo with me. Go to MaidCentral, book a demo. I'd love to show you the software. I'm going to open it up to questions right now. So if you have a question about pricing, about how you're doing things, and if I can help you in any way, let's use that time. Can't be. We're gonna get out of here. No one has a question. You learned everything you needed to know.
I have one for you. I popped in the chat there, but I'll explain it a little bit better. You talked about going to like a bi-weekly, going twice and doing kind of like a quick clean.
Yeah.
I was curious on the profitability on that, like the added driving.
You have to do it. You have to do it very carefully. It has to be in an area you already like have a lot of density at. So I only do that. So like 40% of my business is in the city of St. Louis in 6 zip codes that are all incredibly dense. So you have 300,000 people living in six zip codes. So about 50,000 people per zip code. I only do that in incredibly population dense areas. So
Okay.
Yes, Amy, if you work in an area where you're very rural,
Yeah.
those boost cleanings cannot work unless you can do it on like the neighbors, you're already at the neighbor's house and you were cleaning them anyway. But so that might not work for you. It works for me for my market. So yeah,
Okay.
keep that in mind. Good
Okay.
question.
All right.
All right, guys. You got me. You got my time for a few more minutes. Anything else?
Hey,
All
Matt,
right.
it's Denise. I posted it in the chat as well. My question is, how do you handle the deviation between a rate given on the phone and what you have online? Sometimes it's like a discrepancy.
Mine are going to be pretty close, but I tend to have my online be higher. What I would suggest is make sure that your online are higher, and that way you have some room to negotiate down on phone quotes a little bit. So that would be my suggestion, would be to always make your online quoting show up a little bit higher, maybe 10% higher than a phone quote.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, it gives you a little breathing room.
Cool.
One more for you real quick.
Yeah.
You talked about online booking.
Mhm.
That's a scary concept for me. So you have people like literally like take a chunk out of your day without you making sure it works. Like
so Denise, are you on MaidCentral? Are you? I think you are, right? So do you use the online booking yet? Or are you still getting started with that?
I'm still having the new website built, so I haven't even gotten going. So I'm also scared, Amy. But yeah, because I used to have Launch 27.
So what I would say is it's really less scary because MaidCentral is using revenue that you say that you have available to make a schedule. Now, my company is fairly big and we cover about like 30 something zip codes that we actually service. But I can almost guarantee that we are going to be in or near the zip code that they book online, every single day. So what we do is we set revenue goals in MaidCentral, and then if there's revenue available and somebody wants to book online, it'll sell to them, okay? And that's only if there's revenue available. And then it's asking if they want one morning or afternoon. Well, it's just a negotiation. We still call and follow up with them. If there's just no way we can do it that day, we're like, hey, it looks like it lets you book on Tuesday. I'm gonna have to move you to Wednesday so that I can get you a great team. And you give them a good reason why. Most of the time they don't care. If they say I have to be on Tuesday, we'll be like, all right, I'm gonna wait list you and see if I can move some things around. Let me ask if I can move a customer. Like, it's always a negotiation at that point. It is not like I look at the online booking as it's not set in stone. You haven't taken their money yet. You call them back as soon as you can if there's some discrepancy that you can't meet. So again, everything is negotiation. It's not, you have not promised them anything. You haven't taken their money yet, so you can kind of roll those back if there's something that doesn't make sense.
Okay. How much pushback do you, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Amy.
I was just going to ask how much pushback you get on your, I do it the same way. I'm just curious on the estimate versus quoting. How much pushback do you get on somebody saying, you told me it was going to be this? Like, how do you kind of?
We don't change it. We don't generally change it in the negative. We generally always try and give them a very high quote, and then we surprise them with a lower price.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's a little bit more delightful than
Yes.
we thought it was going to be 500 and it's going to be 600. What we try and do is, look, man, it'll probably be upwards of $700, but if it's less, we'll let you know. If we get in there and we think it's going to be more, we won't go over that price without you agreeing to it. So
Okay.
I never,
Okay.
so we always quote high, and then if we're going to make an adjustment, we adjust down.
Okay.
It's kind of like my philosophy to like surprise customers in good ways, instead of surprise them in ways that are going to upset them. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's our strategy, and I think it would be one to try and see how that works. Is
Awesome.
yeah, go high, and you know what? If they're willing to pay 700, be like, well, it looks like we're done a little early. Would you like us to do a few extra things? We noticed we could do some windows. We noticed it's like in the carpet cleaning world, but do it less sleazy. We noticed that. Have you ever had your carpets cleaned? They always say, I noticed that, right? It's a sales technique. We don't feel like our people can sell anything, so we don't teach them any sales stuff. But you could maybe teach your technicians to say, I noticed that. And honestly, that's so powerful. I noticed that your lights are out in this room. Would you like me to change a light bulb? Like, I don't know. I'm not saying like we do that stuff, but we could do, we're in their homes. We could sell so much more to them. I noticed that your air filters are dirty. We really could and should think about doing more in the home. Basic maintenance stuff. We can teach our technicians more. And I'm guilty of this too, of just focusing on this one thing. Right now, I'm not doing that because we're struggling just to, stay afloat. But in the future, I think all of this balance changes from time to time, and we have to adapt. So I think Chris, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but I think Chris has he sells like a whole bunch of home services, all kinds of crazy stuff, and makes a ton more money than just the cleaning by selling upsells and doing those things. I mean, Chris, are you on the call? I thought I saw you on here. A ton of money. Could you explain it if you are here, Chris? I think we're missing him. All right, guys. Well,
Wait.
Go ahead.
Okay, so when you're with your quoting software, or scheduling software, so let's say you have a day and you have like a technician with absolutely no jobs. So I'm wondering if the way your system works, if you have, say, a list of all the zip codes you work in, you could book a job, and let's say it's a half a day and it's in zip code, whatever. Then would your system pick up with that? It would only be able to schedule another job within so many miles of that job, so you're not taking them from one end of the world to the other?
No, because I'd still want to sell and I would move stuff around if I had to. So the way I think about it is, I think about revenue production planning. I think if I have 100 hours to sell, I want to sell 100 hours no matter what. And then I will move stuff around if I have to make the schedule work as best I can. So I might take another job from somebody else and put it up after that job that makes sense, and work it out in advance. But I use, and I guess Denise does this too, maybe, but I use this idea of revenue production planning, where it's like, I take my revenue that I want to hit target wise, I multiply that, or the total labor hours that I have available. I'm sorry, if I have 100 hours of employees available, I multiply that by their efficiency factor of 80% or whatever. And so that means I have 80 hours to sell, and I'm going to sell that 80 hours to zero. I don't want there to be anything. I'll actually sell that to -10, to tell you the truth, because I know that there's going to be historically from my company, about 11% cancellation rate for my customers. So I actually want to oversell. I also know from MaidCentral, for my software, that I have about a 5% absentee rate for my employees. So, but if I go -10 on the sales, I still generally, it'll all work out basically the way, knowing my numbers. And then generally there's enough flexibility in the schedule that I can move some things around, and figure it out. If I can't, then that's a negotiation with that customer that booked online and say, hey, you're just on the very far reaches of where we go. I work in an 11-mile ring with almost 1 million people. That is probably different than where you're at. Within 11 miles, so 22 miles end to end, right? There's probably 1 million people, 800,000, let's just use the real number, 800,000 people within, from one end of 22 miles. My office is right basically in the dead center of it. So again, the way I do things may not work exactly for you, but the principle holds that you can make adjustments with those customers and figure that stuff out.
Sure.
Do you
Okay.
not use a benefit of using the same technician when you bring on a new customer?
I don't. We
Okay.
don't give them the technician that's going to clean their home regularly the first time, unless they're just starting on maintenance cleaning. We actually sell maintenance cleaning without a deep clean by doing rotational deep cleans too, where we just do one room at a time and then catch their home up over time. I'm actually comfortable doing that with customers because we've done it for a while now. And rotational deep clean is something that we sell. It allows us to get more money per job out of the customer over the long time. And actually our churn rate's lower with those customers because they're just waiting for the next room to get deep cleaned. So they're like, I got my kitchen done this time, what's next? And so the software actually rotates through what rooms are next. So it's, that's one of the ways that I kind of sell. It's a little different than other people do, but
You just sounded like you kind of pull people off to make the schedule work. So I just wondered if clients are used to having a different tech.
I have not really on our solo. So I have a mix of solos and teams. I have in an ideal world, I'd have like 33 techs right now, maybe 40 if I could really hire as much as I want. And we're not selling hardly any just one-time work right now. We're only selling work if they want a one-time job, they need to be buying recurring service as well right now. I don't want to be filling my schedule right now with one-time work at all because I can't, I can't basically get that repeat revenue. We all know that. I've never been able to not do that, but so we're doing about $170,000 a month right now, is what we're doing month over month. And we were doing about 200,000 prior to the pandemic, but almost all the difference in that was one-time work, was about another $25,000 to $30,000 a month in one-time work. So we're back to the level of recurring work that we had. But what's crazy is I had over 700 customers before the pandemic. I have 550 now. So we're doing the same recurring revenue with about 150 less customers because of raising rates. But like I got real serious about this stuff during the pandemic. I mean, I got like pretty serious about making sure any customers that weren't paying me what I thought we were worth, they had to go. So yeah, it was very, very frustrating. I'm sure we all had some stressful days like that. We're like, how are we going to make this work? I got half the people and the same amount of customers, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, this was fun. All right. See y'all.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.